All right, we are live. This is episode 2 of the Patch Ham podcast. I post this motherfucker sporadically. Last episode was Raven Gregory. He probably used a lot more of the P word than Charlie's going to use tonight. But Charlie, welcome to the podcast. This is Charlie Stickney. He is publisher of Scout Comics, writer of White Ash, the game, and a super long title, which I'm going to let you get right. But I actually received that book in the mail today, and I want to talk to you about something very slick that you did. But Charlie, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am really excited to be here, even though I'm your second guest and not your first one. I won't take
Uh,
too much offense to that. We're keeping track.
yeah,
I'll make sure that when I have a podcast, I just keep that in the back of my mind.
yeah, man. Uh, this was the podcast that I started that I wasn't ever sure if I was going to do an episode 2. Episode 3 is scheduled now because someone wants to do it. But yeah, it was very casual, and I made it so that I can have a platform to talk, mostly to friends. Comics is, you know, it's a pretty interesting industry in that, I've been doing this for 11 years now, and I could probably count on two hands like the actual people who I would consider friends who I would want to actually chill with. There are a lot of interesting colleagues, but I don't know. I haven't really been able to get out to many conventions in the past few years, and it just social media does you know get me down and sort of paint a negative perspective sometimes of comics to me. But I remember meeting you on Social First, of course, when I backed White Ash and you backed Destiny New York. And I remember just, you know, being so impressed, especially I feel like it's more common now, but to back a Kickstarter and have the book come through and have it be better than anything that's on shelves, that's kind of hard, especially back then. It was rarer. Just now you see just these amazing creators using Kickstarter primarily. But I read White Ash and I was like, oh goddamn, he's really good. The whole team's really good. So that's how I remember meeting you.
Yeah, and it's very, very similar. I think in like circa 2017, 2018, it would be one out of every, say, 50 books you might back on Kickstarter. You'd be like, okay, I did this and I'm going to read it, as
Yeah.
opposed to I'm doing this to support the creators and support the indie comic movement. And I read, Destiny New York. I was like, oh, so this guy's really talented. I'd like to actually read the entire book beyond the first couple
Yeah.
of pages. And I want to see what else Pat will put out. And I think, it was when I was looking at Kickstarter, I was trying to find projects that made me feel like it was a place I felt good about bringing White Ash, because
Mm-hmm.
I think back then there was a stigma that it was just places that people went who couldn't get a publisher, right? And so
Definitely.
much of that has changed, but there was a reason for that, because a lot of the books that used to be on Kickstarter couldn't get a publisher. And now, for the most part, it's like anything. If you go to you go to the comic shop, you can pick 20 books off the shelves that should not have been on the shelves. But you can also find all these great books. And I think Kickstarter has become that, where you can find the great books, and there's also the books that shouldn't be on the shelves. Uh,
That's true.
yeah.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. And it's funny too. I I have conversations with publishers who, they'll often bring up the idea that I mean you do the same, that we both do both direct market and Kickstarter. And sometimes the publisher will still have this 2015 minded stigma about Kickstarter where they think that it's begging, and they know creators too who feel that it's begging. And I'll sometimes hear from creators who are first and foremost DM creators, which for the listeners who might not know that term, just means that they primarily do work that goes through publishers that get in diamond previews that goes to comic shops, and so some of those creators still feel that that Kickstarter is holding your hand out and begging. And And personally, my thought is that it has always been, and even more is now, it's a pre-order system. It's a way to remove any middleman between creator and consumer and just make that happen, which to me, especially now, especially in this kind of a market where people have such less of a barrier between creator and consumer in every industry, like in music right now, if someone gets signed, they're called an industry plant. Whereas in comics, some creators still are really into the idea of an industry driven industry.
Well, and I also think like what those creators who don't understand Kickstarter don't see is the direct market's a pre-order system, right? And the difference is you're getting retailers to direct order your books versus the people who are going to read them. Because if you're trying to
Oh,
get into comic book shops, it doesn't matter how many people want your book. At the end of the day, it's really about how many retailers are willing to order it. So, from the publishing side, a publisher has to think, how can I get the retailers excited about the title? It's not getting fans or the readers excited about it. It's how do I get store owners excited about this comic book? Store owners who are never going to read it. And so for creators to think that that is the better system versus a pre-order system that goes directly to the people who are excited about the book, where the creator gets the money,
yeah.
and a higher percentage of the money. To me, it doesn't make sense. And at the end of the day, if you're talking to publishers who don't understand it, what they need to really sort of see is that the direct market is a different marketplace than the Kickstarter marketplace. It's the same way that a lot of film production companies sliver off different rights. There's the domestic rights, there's the video rights, there's the international rights, and all of those are different markets, and different people consume things in different ways. And there are people who just buy books on Kickstarter, and there are
Oh,
people who just buy books in the direct market, and the overlap between the two is infinitesimal and is not going to affect the sales of a book. Um,
yeah.
so like I think it's nonsensical for a publisher to take that into account. What a publisher should be doing is saying, oh my goodness, this book had a great reception on Kickstarter. There's the test market for it. People like this kind of thing. Now it's like, now can I bring it to a different group of people and try to generate the same amount of excitement for this project?
Yeah, definitely. It's that overlap, that small overlap is a conversation that I have a lot where some publishers definitely still have that idea of retailers will see that it's been done before. And to me, if a retailer thinks that it's been done before, they dramatically also misunderstand how small that overlap is. I mean, dude, I've I published Destiny New York, one graphic novel myself per year of the main title, and I run the single issues through Black Mask. Every single person who I see at a convention who comes up with a Black Mask issue for me to sign and sees volumes 1 through 4, they're like, "What? What is this? How is that volume 4 and this is issue 6? What
Right.
is this?" And I'm very loud on social about both methods, but you're right. People who are in the comic shop are not necessarily the same people who are in the comics industry on Kickstarter. It's a totally different vibe. And yeah, it's been very interesting finding out how different it is. And I feel like the same is true of web comics too, where
Yeah.
the people who read webtoons and read
Which is a
uh
huge market. It's a
oh yeah.
huge market,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean that
bigger than some of the direct market
it
titles in
is.
terms of number of eyeballs. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's to me, who was kind of proving that difference early on was Sejic, Stepan Sejic, who he was putting out he was putting out Sunstone for
Right.
free
Right.
on DeviantArt, and he had links to it where you could just download it, and he still has that. First, before trade, read Sunstone for free, and it's still managed even after all those people, which is as many as can see it, get that book for free. It becomes Top Cow's #1 bestseller
Right.
in the DM, and
Had
that's
nothing to do with the contents, but and the beautiful art. No,
Yeah,
I think you also see something like Girl Genius, right? Phil Folio, is that his last name? I don't know. Did you know that book? Like that web comic's
I
been around
do.
forever.
I was just
And
talking about that book too, so I'm curious to see what you're gonna say. Yeah,
but you look at like that's someone who for the longest time, built up an audience and was figuring out how to do it on just on his own website, right? Not even through webtoons, and then would do some kind of trades. But now that he has the Kickstarter component, he can then really finance everything he's doing by building up his audience and then just doing these trades through Kickstarter, making 150, 200,000, and there's a year's salary that he has in a day.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
wild. Yeah, it's those Kickstarters are definitely ones that I look to, and I see that as, it's a great example of a legend who was doing things on his own previously, adapting his method and perfectly doing it on Kickstarter. Who's doing the same actually right now to me is Ron Randall. His
Hmm.
Kickstarter
Yeah,
game is amazing, and I first heard of Trekker on Kickstarter because that's the part of the comics industry that I'm most keyed into.
sure.
Um, but when I saw how much was available before that, I was stunned. It's cool seeing people who are honest to God legends really adapt to the form. And I really think that someone like Terry Moore
I was
would,
just gonna say that. Yeah.
dude, he would be a monster on Kickstarter. That doorbell right now, that's my Destiny New York trading cards. Um, I
Do you
ordered
want to
these.
go get them?
No, 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 it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to see more legends using Kickstarter. A great example is wow, his name escapes me, which is crazy. Brian Polito. Brian Polito.
Yeah.
Um, that dude is a marketing genius, and I look to his campaigns and the way that he talks about it, the way that he makes fans feel like part of it. Honestly, I think that you're kind of doing the same thing. He makes fans feel like part of a movement. You make fans feel like part of a fictional community. Like you really have this knack for creating an experience where um you know in White Ash you had a campaign themed to a funeral. You have these town themed uh merch items that really accentuate the the character of the town, and yeah, you bring in fans in a way that makes them feel like part of the fictional universe, which is really cool.
Well, I think like the advantage that Kickstarter has is that for those of us who do serial kickstarting, like you do with a series like Destiny New York, is
Yeah,
that you are able to cultivate and build a fan base. And if you constantly deliver the good quality books and you're kind to your backers and you deliver and you talk to them,
yeah,
people who love your work are going to love that direct communication that they have with you,
yeah,
or the ability to have that direct communication. It feels more intimate. And so I think that's something that Kickstarter does. And yeah, I have tried to make everything that I do with White Ash feel like a brand, feel like but I think it's also trying to make it feel like an established brand that's been
right,
around a little bit longer. So there is a history. Because like one of the things with my writing is that, before I start writing a story, I often just go and I like to plan everything. I always leave myself room to be organic when I'm doing the actual scripting, but I have, mapped out thousands of years in the past. I know where things are going in the future. So you have this framework to work in. And
right,
I think, people see when they're reading a writer, they have a sense if they know where they're going with a story.
yeah,
And so, like I want to have everything make it feel like White Ash is this established brand that's been around for longer than 4 years. And 3 years ago is more than 3 years and 2 years. Like right from the gate, I want people to know this is an experience. It's something that we're cultivating. And so I do think like if you have a fan base, Kickstarter is such a wonderful place because you can go there and you can again you through crowdfunding, you bring in your fans and you build more.
yeah,
I've actually built almost my entire fan base starting from the ground up through Kickstarter, because I didn't have a fan base in comics when I came to Kickstarter. And so for me, like that's been my experience, and I love what Polito's doing, but he also has 20 years in the comic industry, and that
True.
character has been around for 20 years. So, he's able to sort of take that, and now he has 25 to 3,500 rabid fans on Kickstarter. And like, I think, for Destiny New York, for the universe there, for me, for the White Ash universe, which also has Glarian and all of that, I would love to get to the point where I have 1,500 to 2,000 dedicated fans
Oh
who
yeah.
are excited for those events. And I feel like I'm very lucky. Like, I've gotten to the place now where I think a White Ash product is probably going to have 1,000 fans or more, which is amazing. It's an amazing place to be at, because it's tapping into something that people like on Kickstarter. It's appealing to people. And so, like, if you can, once you start building up that fan base, it really can become a full-time business like Polito's doing. But then it's about like trying to stay true to your brand.
Right.
Um, and constantly adjusting, because Kickstarter does different things, and like, the collector's mindset that's come into Kickstarter the same way that's come into the speculator market in the
Oh
comic
yeah.
book stores.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to play with, but you always want to make sure you're offering something for your core audience too, which is the good stories, which is what you excel at.
And yeah, I mean that's a thing that's on my mind constantly, as the balance between the creator who wants to challenge himself and make the story as great as possible, versus being the person who really taps into what is working on Kickstarter, and with the DM stuff, what's working there, and trying to capture that collecting base. Do you find yourself, because I mean, my personal experience is that before I was writing full time and doing comics full time, I would, you know, comics and just writing in general was my escape. It was my creative outlet. I do feel that now sometimes I'll find myself doing like menial shit and doing business stuff as an escape from the creative angle of things, because sometimes it can be so overwhelming, just like trying to live up to what we've done so far when we have a series that's going on for this long. Do you feel that pressure that like do you look back at like White Ash, the first two arcs, and think, wow, now it's time to get moving on this, but I feel like I have to live up to what's happened already?
uh, I haven't done quite as many volumes as you have, so maybe at some point I'll start to feel that way.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that's nice for me is that, working with Connor, who I've worked with since the beginning, and working with Finn, like, there's a partnership and there's a team there.
Right.
And so, I think we energize each other. And I think I showed you some of the, like, Mick Bayers came in to do some layout pencils for the second
Oh
half
yeah.
of this
Yeah.
next thing, and then having Connor ink them. So, like, I enjoy the dynamic of working a little bit with some different artists, different people bringing in different energy. And the nice thing about White Ash that I'm able to do now is like, and I think this is the thing that you're also doing too, is like, you have all these side stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if the like, the side stories for me are the escape from the main narrative, right? If I need to
Oh
feel
yeah.
refreshed, I can
Yeah.
go into all this other stuff that I'm sort of doing. So like
Right.
one of the issues that's coming out is an issue set in the 1950s. So it doesn't have Alec and Lillian. So it's a little bit of a break from them, but it's the history of some of these other characters. And I got to tell a little bit of a noir tale told in the 50s, but it's still about fleshing out the history of White Ash. So
Right.
I think, like, the great thing is, the longer you establish something, the more latitude you have to play in that universe and tell different types of stories.
Yeah.
So for me, like, that's where I can create an escape now. I don't have to think this isn't going to always be the Alec and Lillian show. Like, that's the core driver, but I don't have to sort of feel tired about living up to that, because there are all these other pieces that are starting to come into play that I can have fun with now.
Right. And yeah, doing that kind of thing long term can definitely help. It personally, when I take that break that you're talking about and dive off into a side story, um going back to the main story does feel kind of momentous. It feels like I'm, returning home in a way. I do want to ask though, because I think about this constantly. Um, what do you think about sticking the ending, do you think about how long you're going to spend with White Ash, or is it just totally open ended, or do you have like a 10-year plan? I'm so curious for someone who's doing something similar in that you have a core title and spinoffs that are seemingly ongoing. What's the plan there?
So it all goes back to, my background was I started out, when I was in high school, I was 100% going to be a comic book writer and inker. That's what I wanted to do. I went to college and I interned at Marvel, but I was also a film major. And so then, like at the end of college, the question was I going to move to New York because I was going to college in the Hudson Valley, and then try to break into the comic industry, or was I going to go into the film industry? And then I got a job offer out in Los Angeles. So I moved out to LA, and I ended up being, working in film and animation for about 15, 20 years. And so doing all of that, I also have a background in film and TV. And so when I approach a project, I'm looking at it as something that could be in all those different mediums. Now, I think it's important that you don't sort of, and think that people, where people misstep is they're like, okay, I'm adapting this script from a film
Yeah,
into a comic book, and you just like, okay, I'm just going to break it up into panels, and like all these characters' dialogues, this gigantic monologue, which would have worked with an actor, I'm just going to stick on the page and have like 100 word balloons.
right.
People don't understand there's different mediums. But and my point is that when I conceive of something, I do it in like different permutations. I think this is how, if it was a TV show on Netflix, this is how it would be.
Oh
If
yeah,
it was a network broadcast show, this is how it would be, because those are very different things. Like something like White Ash. If it was on the CW, you'd have a monster of the week coming in that Alec and Lillian would have to be dealing with each week. It would be a
yeah,
new brood monster, and they would defeat that brood monster that came into town, and you'd inch the narrative forward, right?
right, right.
Versus the Netflix version, which is just one long season where one story is told. You have a couple of monsters, but it all comes together. So, like in the back of my mind, I was conceiving it as a Netflix show, a CW, a network/CW show, as a comic book, as a feature film. What are all these different permutations? But to do that, you have to have like a big plan for it.
Yeah,
So I have like I have this document which was like, what's the first season of the TV show? What's the second season of the TV show? And so it was like a 5 season outline,
okay,
which I could then take from that and be like, okay, how does that turn into a comic book, and start creating a new document? So, I really had the thing broken down if I wanted it to be, an arc of a TV show. So this is a very long answer, which is back to your question, is I know where the end of the first season of the TV show would be, right?
okay, okay.
And we're probably 2 trades away from where the end of the first season of the TV show would be.
Oh wow, okay, okay.
So like we're still like, a good 400 pages away from season 1 being done. And then season 2, or trades, the next 4 trades after that,
Yeah,
is another arc that I've already mapped out. So like the first 2 arcs, which would be like the first 2 years of it on television, or the first 8 or 9 trades roughly, are all like pretty broken down into where those go, and they have definitive answer. And then like I had like the general outline for seasons 3, 4, and 5, but it was always sort of conceived as like a 5 season show, and this is how it would end.
okay.
And this is like and then organically new things came into play. But yes, sticking the landing is really important. And I think the hardest thing about doing that is, if you're creating something that's serialized and open-ended, if you don't have a plan where you begin, of where you need to get to,
Right.
I think that becomes difficult. So I always have like endpoints. Like I could end it after this first arc, like if the first, like where the season 1 would end, the first 4 trades, like that could be an omnibus, and it could be a satisfying ending, and we could end the story there. Just like with any TV show, like you have the season ends, everyone feels good, and then there's a little something extra in case you want to keep it going,
Yeah.
right? So I have those markers in mind. So hopefully each of those things could stick their landing. And I do the same thing like with the game. I have all that mapped out. So with each of my things, I know where the ending could be,
Yeah.
or where it should be. And then, like as you write, you come up with new things, and the world changes, new characters come in, and maybe that changes. But I think if you go into these things and you don't know where you're going, that's where you get in trouble, and not having something that's satisfying, because you can't keep seeding things. Like I'll tell you right now, there are things that happened in the first and second issue of White Ash that have not played out. Like there are little asides, panels where some things are hidden in, that are there for 10 another 10 or 12 issues down the road, that we're going to reveal if you go back and be like, oh my god, that was there all along.
Yeah.
So I have those things seeded. So like again, going back to like sticking the landing and the history, it's all built to come together.
Yeah. That's that, as a writer, doing what I do is so cool to hear you say, because I mean, when I am asked a similar question and I say that, I see Destiny New York going to about, if I'm lucky, volume 11,
Mm-hmm.
and people think I'm crazy, dude. So, so to hear you say that, and I don't think I'm crazy at all. I think
No,
that, I believe in the story. I believe in people's belief in the story, and I imagine that you do too. And why wouldn't you? Um, I think that our both of our series are going to be able to go as long as we want them to, and get the ending that we want. But yeah, as a reader and a writer doing, long form, which is, dude, it's so rare. It's so rare. And that's kind of why I pick Kickstarter in some ways, is that, all the pitches that I do to a traditional publisher, I'll do them with the idea that, this series can go on, but I have an ending that I'm satisfied with, that I'll be chill with. Most of the stuff on Kickstarter, besides books that are like a fun one-off that I just wanted to crowdfund, there are books that I don't want to have that way. That I'll like Prison Witch. Prison Witch is a book that I wanted to at least go past volume 1. And it ended up where we thought it would be best to end it at 3, but I wouldn't have wanted to just do one, with 4 issues at a traditional publisher and just call it a day. That was on Kickstarter for that purpose. Yeah, because the DM is so scared of longevity. And with you being both, both foots in, as a crowdfunding mogul pretty much now, that's kind of how I see us. You are
you're a
someone who,
brand. You're an established brand on Kickstarter, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
there's a few of us.
there are a few of us, and we are, people who have been told that people look to us and to our campaigns to see what is going to work for this kind of a book. And that's always the advice that I give is, if you are going to do a crowdfunding campaign, instead of asking us the obvious questions, do the work first and look at these campaigns that work. Look at campaigns that are in your genre and in the mode of book that you want to do. And I definitely still to this day, I look to you to see what to do sometimes. But yeah, so you as Scout publisher, you also have that sense of what the DM will want. It is it frustrating being in this mode of industry where retailers, really want these 4-issue series and don't really trust longevity, or am I off base there?
Well, I don't think that the retailers want the 4-issue miniseries. I think the retailers want saga, right? The retailers
Oh,
want the
yeah.
brands that they can sell, but they don't have any faith in anything new. Like there's a difference And so the publishers can't put their weight behind it because the direct market won't support it. One of the things like I tell creators is know the business of comics. Really, like, because it's important for you to understand like how many issues a title sells. Check Comicron, look at different publishers, get a sense of where the numbers are in your book. So like when I was starting White Hash, before I was with Scout, before I was with anything, I looked at that and I said, my goodness, like the number of creators who are not big names in the industry who are selling more than, say, 5,000 copies of a number 3 is very small.
Yeah.
And, like, and then I started thinking about, okay, let's look at, well, like this was, a couple of years ago. So it was like a $3.99 price point. Like what's the publisher getting back? So the publisher is getting back about $3.99, maybe $1.70. So $1.70 times, 5,000 copies. And all of a sudden you're looking like, what, that's like $8,000 in revenue for that comic. How much is going to printing? How much is left over? And I realized, like, if I had submitted to Image back then, because like that was my first thought. It's like, oh, I'm an independent creator. I want to own something. I'm going to submit to Image. And I'm looking at the Image titles and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to afford to make my book like after 3 issues. And I want this to be some kind of longevity, for this series. So then it was, well, I have to go to Kickstarter because because that's the place where I might be able to do this long term. And then finding, because like, again, I originally came to Scout as a creator, finding a place that was okay with me continuing to Kickstarter it and do something separate. And so like I was still doing my Kickstarter thing and then Scout was going to put it out. And for me, that was the perfect marriage because I could do my own thing on Kickstarter. They could put out in the direct market. But, back to your question, I think, retailers, we all want the big hit. But retailers, they only have so much money to invest because that's what they're doing. They're pre-ordering books and they have to figure out what's going to sell. And they don't have a sense of a new title. And unless it comes from an established team, what they're going to do is they order based on a company.
Right.
They know Black Mask sells X number of titles for their number 1s in average. They know Scout does the same. And then they'll cut the number 2s down by half. And then they'll, hopefully, number 1 will have come out and they'll see how it sells. And then they'll decide whether they cut number 3 down or just put it straight to pull, which means, for people just watching, they only order the book if someone comes into the store and says, add it to my pull list.
Right.
So like there's a lot of retailers that past 1 or 2 don't order any of the independents. And I'm talking like after like the top 3 or 4 publishers past the 3rd issue, unless a customer asks for it. So that's, I think, like when that's the store policy because they're trying to be fiscally prudent.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like then the publishers have to look at that and say, okay, well, we're not going to have a book that's profitable after 4 or 5 issues. So the things that we're looking for are self-contained things that we can only lose money on 2 issues versus 10, right? Or what have you. So I think like from the publishing side, it's frustrating because you'd love to do longer form and you want that hit, but the comic shops in general are risk averse. They want everything that's returnable. They don't want to, it's a relationship built on trust, but ultimately everybody wants the big long running hit because then they can, they have the trades in stock that, people walk into the store, they can say, oh, Saga, there's 8 trades that you can catch up on and there's new issues coming out.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. So they want the books to be Saga, but don't trust the book to be Saga.
Unless Brian K. Vaughan's writing it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I kind of, as far as that goes, I can't blame them. Brian K. Vaughan to me is still who I look at as, the go-to long-form writer. Like, I do count my, my issue equivalents of Destiny New York, and I think, man, how close am I to having a Why the Last Man length series here? And I always find it interesting how he would do, honestly, what you were describing. He had his main ongoing series, and he would have these issues at the end of every trade or so where he would focus on one character and kind of break from that main narrative and really dig into something that was side that did impact the main narrative, and that was so cool to me and very influential as far as what I'm doing. So yeah, I get it. I look at him still as the guy who does this, and yeah, I think that what we're doing though on Kickstarter is it's pretty unique at this point. I'm seeing a few other people try and do it, but just I think the scope of having a core title with a bunch of spin-offs that could become their own core titles is pretty rare these days, and it's cool to see you doing it, man.
Yeah, yeah, and you as well. I mean, like it's great when it's good stuff. I think
Yeah.
that's again with everything. People want great stuff. People love to complain about things, but deep down they want to be blown away by things. Um,
Yeah, oh, that's so true. That's so true, dude. Yeah, because it's as creators, we take negative comments, and I shouldn't say we. I'll speak from my perspective. I take negative comments mad personal, dude. Like I got a comment recently talking about and this is no hate to this person. It was a negative thing I couldn't have predicted. Um, I funded Smoke Weeds to the Future, and the plan was to put spot gloss on the main cover.
mhm.
And when I did my, we went to print update. I was like, I love cover B so much that we're gonna put spot gloss on that one too as a surprise for the backers. And I announced it, and some guy comments that he was furious with me for changing my mind because he chose cover A for the spot gloss, even though he preferred cover B, and that if I could change my mind, so could he. So change out his book for cover B, and he was so pissed. And my answer was, dude, I mean, yeah, of course I'll change it out for you. Like, why would you assume that I wouldn't change it out for you? And I looked at his orders, and he had ordered a bunch of my stuff. So yeah, you're right. As a lifelong reader and fan of the writers that I follow, I couldn't imagine, being that angry at a writer I love for making a business change that is beneficial to other people. But it's very interesting to see, when we become we've become essentially not only that person's writer to follow, we've also become their can I speak to the manager person, so
Right, 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 right. You are the
it's fun.
company, you are the brand,
Yeah,
and so like you have all the responsibility,
yeah,
like on your shoulders. And like I think of course, like this industry is built on it's a customer service industry, right?
yeah,
And I think like that's if you want to have a good brand on Kickstarter, you just build that in. Like I build into my budget. I'm gonna need to help. Like this order's not going to go through. I'm just going to have a little extra to take care of that stuff because
yeah.
you want to be that. And I feel like most of your backers are not going to take advantage of things. And like in the couple of times I've had people say this was damaged, they're like, "Do you want me to send you pictures?" I'm like, like if you're offering to send pictures, I know that something got screwed up there.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
um,
No, I've had the same thing too. Yeah, where people offer to send pictures. And I think it's best to say no, but it is interesting to see sometimes. Someone just sent me pictures, and I clicked, and I don't know how it happened. It looked as if the book had passed through the BP oil spill. I have no idea how. But yeah, it's very unpredictable what can happen when you're sending stuff out. So I just
that
default 100% to trusting backers.
on the flip side, like I've seen some of the complaints that have come into Scout, and they're like, "Look at this book," and you're like, "There's the teeniest little nick somewhere that unless you had a magnifying glass and you were going over the book to find that teeny dent as like
Oh
the
yeah,
imperfection, which is dinging it from like a 9.9 to a 9.2." And like
right.
like these people, like everyone has different reasons for wanting to want to collect comics. I want to sell books to whoever wants to buy them, um, but ultimately I write for the readers.
Yeah, no, it's 100% same. And what you say there is interesting. Is that that does open up the idea that you know when you become the person who's also making the collectible item, there could be someone who wants the second one to sell on eBay. So totally. that could
We
happen.
just did a whatnot sale through Scout a ways back, and there was a metal J. Lee cover that I had for White Ash, and they made some metal covers up.
Mm.
And on the Whatnot show, I was there live. I'm signing it. I'm gonna mail them out with certificates of authenticity, and I was throwing in some other stuff. Literally a week later, there was a whole bunch of Charlie Stickney signed books on eBay, right?
Oh, of course,
Like sure,
yeah,
sure. And I kind of laughed because, like, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, you know what? If someone wants to buy them on eBay, that's great. That means that there's enough of a brand there that someone's looking to buy them. And if that guy can make some money, great.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. It was always funny. When I was a staff writer at Zenoscope, I would go to conventions with them, and we would generally have 4 or 5 boxes of free comics. There would be a number one, and we would just give them out. I would sign and hand them out to people passing by, and those number ones. Now that time has passed, I'll see them on eBay all the time, and they'll go for like 20, 30 bucks, and I'll remember how hard it was sometimes to get people to just to take them,
yeah,
and it's like everything that is abundant in the hobby, like trading cards, comics, will one day become a bit less abundant. So yeah, it's definitely one thing to key into there for sure. Because I mean, dude, if I had one of those boxes now of those books, I was like, please take it. I would, be pretty well up for that month. The collector's
well,
market is just kind of hard for me to grasp sometimes. I get it when it comes to Pokemon cards because I'm really keyed in as a fan, but I'm really trying to adjust to understanding it as a creator as well.
yeah. I mean, I think you need to not only adjust to it as a creator, but know what trends are working, right?
Yeah,
And there are things that work in the direct market. There are things that work on Kickstarter.
yeah,
You can get sexier with your covers. You
yeah,
can, and that's something that sells on Kickstarter, right? And you need to sort of figure out, if you're going to lean into those things, where's your line? Where's your line in terms of what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do? How many covers are you willing to put out for your project? And I think it's also different when you're doing single issues versus doing trades like you do. And if you're doing the trades, then they're still collectible. You can still do the variant covers, but it's not the same thing as if you have that floppy, right?
you're right,
Um,
100% right. Yeah,
and so knowing like what's going to work for your trade campaign versus your single issue campaign, because those are also different things in how you can market both of those. Um, so like I always try to keep those things in mind. And like you said, you look at other people's campaigns. If you're looking to be a creator on Kickstarter, you got to always sort of check out what other people are doing, what's working, what's not working, and take the pieces of it that will work for you. I will, going back, I would say, one of the first campaigns I saw was Skies of Fire. And they were one of the first hits that was kind of serialized on Kickstarter. And then Ray, who ran that campaign, had a whole blog where it was great information where he was breaking down, this is the label printer I use. This is like how I do this. This is where and like he just laid out a blueprint. I was like, this is amazing information. And it was great, and I used that. I used his template, and then I modified it for the kind of things that I was doing and
yeah,
upgraded it with little pieces from here and there.
that's how you do it.
But
Yeah,
but what I did for my first campaign is very different than what I do now, because I think what people are looking for on Kickstarter is different. People's general knowledge coming to a Kickstarter campaign is also different now than it used to be,
yeah,
where you don't need to handhold them as much. They get it. Like there are the people who are looking for the variant tiers, there's the people who are looking for the reader tiers, there's the people looking for their deals. And so you don't need to spell things out as much in the way that maybe you'd needed to do in the past.
yeah. You're right. Yeah. What specific change have you made that um, as you've realized that you don't have to spell things out? That
So,
I'm interested in. Yeah.
so one of the things I got rid of in my campaigns is I no longer have the section which is like, here's the picture of this tier, here's the picture of this tier, here's the picture
Ooh.
of this tier,
Okay.
because for two reasons. One, again, the general knowledge of how Kickstarter campaigns work is better. Secondly, Kickstarter added that thing where it bullet points everything that's coming in your pledge tier. when you click on the pledge tiers as
Right.
individual items. So what I do now is I just show like, here are my variants, here are my rewards, go pledge for the package you want. And I don't take up a third of my page reiterating information that's already there that you can easily get if you just like, okay, it's this cover. Well, if I go to the cover sections, I can see it. And I know it comes with this cover, it comes with this, it comes with that. You know, so
Dude, yeah, I mean, you kind of blow my mind right now. I still spend so much time on those graphics, and I don't want to. So to hear you say that and to do what you do, that's really cool, man.
well,
Yeah, that's the thing for me to try for sure because I you know, you have done that in the past where I did sometimes model what I would do after how you had your reward section. But hearing you say that, it makes sense to me. And it kind of ties back into my mode as a creator is that I'll I'll always want to under explain rather than over explain in my story. I would rather the reader be like, wait, what? And read back rather than be like, I know, bitch, I get it, you know? So for you to say that makes me think that maybe I'm kind of over explaining how I do it as a business person too, rather than a creator. So that's intriguing, man.
well, just think like I think you need to have the information on the page. Like I would still keep, because you do a lot of your add-ons through Kickstarter.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're going to do the add-ons, show the pictures of the add-ons, because that's also something Kickstarter does not do well. They don't show pictures with the add-ons yet when you're adding them on. So I
Yeah,
think having that at your bottom of your campaign is important.
yeah.
But like that, this is the base tier, this is the sections. I don't think you need that, because if you've shown the covers, if people know what the books are, if they've seen your Jen St. Ange variant cover and they're like, okay, I
Mhm.
want that one, I go to the Jen St. Ange variant tier and I click it.
Damn, dude, it it rings as so true what you're saying, you know. Uh I think that maybe I'm gonna try that for sure. Um
Or at least cut it down. Like just think about what information you need on the page, because I also hate when I go to a Kickstarter page and I'm scrolling forever to try to find out what I need, right?
yes.
You know,
Yes.
like get your information out. Like it's just like any story. You want to get the crucial information out and you want to move on.
Dude, that's 100%. That's the note that I give all the time too, and I have to remind myself to do that too. Because I remember I was talking to David Pepos about this. He had campaigns for his book The OZ, and
Mhm.
he did a great job.
Yeah,
And our conversations were, you know, and he's someone who he did the exact right research and came in and asked specified questions, and that to me is why he did so well.
he's a really smart guy. Like
He is
I've spent some time, you know, he's out here in LA, so I know him pretty well. He's yeah,
he is a good guy.
sharp.
He prepared himself, and then he got the kind of inside baseball from the people who have done it, and that to me is crucial. So what we talked about with David was, you know, condense, you know, don't there are things that the comics publishers will want to really highlight, like pull quotes. To me, for Kickstarter, pull way the fuck back on that kind of stuff. If you're gonna have one or two, cool, but don't have a full page of it, and you know, really streamline and get to the point. And I gave that advice to David, and now I'm taking that from you. What you're saying makes 100% sense because I'll have my reward section where I have a picture of each reward, and then I'll have what I see as the menu where I'll break down what each tier gets. But you're right, dude. You know, that's already on the side. Kickstarter sets it up for you. And yeah, I think you're right, man. I think that it's time to pull back on that kind of shit. And I've never thought about it. And hearing you say it, I think it's the way to go.
Well, it's something I noticed, and I'll tell you what changed my mind was I was looking at like some of these crazy, uh, I like to say the boob cover campaigns, right?
Yeah.
And like they were just here, like here's one page of interiors, and then here's 20 pages of covers, and
Yeah.
then it was like the campaign page was over. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess because all people want to do is they're looking for the cover they want, and then they
Right.
go over and pledge. And with the literacy being higher and with the information being there, it's like you look, you scroll down, and if you find the thing you want, you go over to the thing that, like it's there, then you go get it.
Yeah. No, dude, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. There's so much that we can take from the titty campaigns that they you know, they are seen by the traditional comics industry as this thing to not be. But I'm telling you, I think, and I've thought for a while, that those books, one, are misunderstood, but two, have more dedicated readers than most of the DM books written by people who are bitching about those books being on Kickstarter and being, you know, in the DM. I A lot of my time at Zenoscope, which is seen sometimes as a breast centric company, right?
At least the covers, right? Like,
Yeah,
because like there's a difference between the covers and the interiors sometimes.
what you just said is the exact case. Is is that the people who think that Zenoscope is that way are people who don't read the books yet, because the books aren't that way, and those kind of covers are a marketing tactic that some people on Kickstarter use, and other people really are making titty books that are doing well. But I don't see Zenoscope as that way at all, even though people do.
Well,
Um, but it's
well,
very interesting seeing, seeing how those books that are seen that way, seen in this negative light, are really setting the tone for a lot of what works on crowdfunding.
I think also like when you go back to it, there's marketing, right? Marketing is important. If you look at a movie poster, it's either action or it's sex. Like, you're trying to sell like one of those things or both for, something to, you got to get people into the theater. It's the
Yeah.
story that's going to hook them. And I know when I did the first issue of White Ash in the direct market, I had a long talk with Connor, and I was like, let's do something different. Let's do something really exciting. I've seen what Jeff Lemire is doing with, and I forget get the title right now. I'm blanking on it, but it was all set in this town, and every cover was a graphic image of his town,
Okay.
and I was like, let's do that with White Ash. Let's have all of our covers be some graphic image of the town, and so we're going to do a tree for the first issue.
Yeah.
And so Connor did this beautiful cover of a tree, and I was like, in retrospect, when you have attractive elves, maybe featuring
Yeah.
them on the cover is going to sell more issues in the direct market
Yeah.
than a tree, even though it's a beautiful tree. And like the content of the book has some sexuality to it, but it's not a sex book. Like I
Yeah.
like my first background was writing romantic comedies. So for me, like it's that emotional will they won't, the sexual tension that you want kind of simmering up. That's the core that also helps keep people engaged in having them reading the story. But getting a little bit of that appeal on, into the cover, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But I think there's a difference between having a sensual cover or sexual cover and a show me your bits cover. And I think that's
Yeah.
the problem on Kickstarter, where too many people go with the, hey, it's just this crazy pose where I'm showing you everything, but people buy it. You
It's
know,
true. Yeah, it's true. And sometimes you do gotta follow what people buy. And I do want to talk more about these damn titties and stuff. But first up, we have Dan Leister, who's asking, can we have too many alt covers on a book? And I mean, I'm very interested to hear your response, because you have that DM and Kickstarter perspective. My quick perspective is that what I do in Kickstarter's trades, so it becomes cumbersome to just store it. I haven't found that it tires people out as far as buyers, but storage is a is a major problem because they're big fucking books. But Charlie, I think that you can speak better to the single issue front than I could.
well, I think it's different for both markets. I think in the direct market, it depends on the artist and it depends on what publisher is putting out the books, and the content. And if it's the 1,000th issue of Amazing Spider-Man, you can probably do 75 variant covers and all of them will sell to some extent, especially if you
Yeah.
have, the biggest names in the industry working on it. If you're at Scout and you put out 20 covers for the first book, then you're burning money.
Right.
Because like the stores just can't, they're not going to order that many of a Scout book, like how deep will they run in terms of what they're stocking? If they ordered all of those covers, maybe then they're ordering one of each. So rather than getting 20 of one M&A cover, you're getting one of every single different cover for collectors, and then you're not servicing your readers. On Kickstarter, I think it's different, and I think it comes down to what kind of campaign you're running. If you're running the dirty cover campaigns,
Yeah.
I think as long as those are well drawn, I mean, people are selling 10 to 15 deep, 20 deep with those covers and doing quite well.
Yeah.
I think, like for White Ash, I've done the last couple of campaigns, I've done roughly 6 covers plus a sketch cover. And for me, it comes down to finding that balance between what I can logistically handle, as you were saying, in terms of storage, but also making sure I have good artists, because I'm not, some of these covers are sexy, but I'm not looking to do like the nude cover, like the before and after with and without clothes cover.
Yeah.
So I want to have really good artists. So I need to make sure that everything that I'm putting out there is a good cover. And then it's also what you can afford,
Right.
because good covers cost a lot of money. Well, Daniel, just to answer that, if you put out too many covers, I think it depends, because again, going back to it, I have people, like when I look at this last campaign that I have, there's the readers, and the readers are just going to order your A cover.
That's right.
And like the people who want to read my book are just going to read it. It doesn't matter how many covers I put out to them. Maybe it might put off a few new people who come to the campaign, but probably not, because they, like I always have the base tier where you can catch up, you can get the new issue. So I think people are savvy. Like if they like something, they're going to read it. But if they want to collect something, they're going to collect it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But there is a perception. Are you selling a comic or are you selling covers? And I think there are people on Kickstarter who are definitely selling covers. Like
Oh
they're not
yeah.
selling. That's so. Like I think, like as long as you know what you're doing, if you're selling a book for people to read, then maybe you do want to max out at a certain thing. Although I know personally, I've started to develop a problem in that I like getting covers.
Oh, it's so fun, right? It's
you're
fun.
you're like, oh wait, this artist is really great too. Maybe I should have them do a variant. Okay, and maybe this one, and you're like, okay, now I've got 10 out there, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to use all 10. I'll just save this one. Oh, here's another artist. And yeah, like you are selling to 2 different groups. Like I design my campaign so the people who want to read can read, and the people who want to collect can collect. Because I think you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. You're not going to get probably more story people because you're not offering something for the collectors.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to, like if I just did one cover, I would have less overall backers. So that's, that's what I look like. As long as you have a strong returning core, I wouldn't necessarily do your very first campaign on Kickstarter with 20 covers, because also no one knows who you are and you're spending a lot of money. Make sure you have something that people want before you go crazy.
That's true. Yeah, because you have to you know, when you're funding cover production yourself, that isn't a thing where you could be like, Kickstarter backers, trust me, it's gonna look good. With the interiors, that's more of a thing. I have funded before a campaign as many as half the book and as few as 4 pages of a book. And because the truth is that once people will see what the book looks like inside, they know what it's going to look like, and they're willing to take that gamble that the artist is going to maintain that quality of those 4, 5, 6, 10 pages for the entire book. With a cover, you can't be like, here's this person's sketch. I promise it's going to look good. You have to pay for it before, you know. So that's a huge financial gamble for sure if you're an unknown to book 20 covers. That's crazy. However, what you said is true too, about those campaigns where it is about covers. I've seen campaigns recently where they'll have more covers per issue than actual pages of story content, because the interiors end up being like an 8-page story that is a vehicle for it to still be a comic, but really that issue is just filled with more cover centric material,
Yeah, and look, the art on the interior is not so good because I think the other thing is Kickstarter has also become a place where people feel comfortable getting their adult content.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
oh yeah,
where it's like you don't have to go into a store to get it. Your credit card statement says Kickstarter,
that's right.
right? So it's a safer place for people to get their adult content. So I think people are going to it and then it feels a little bit more legit than going to steamyenterprises.com and downloading whatever is there. Yeah. Good. David also has a cover problem. I'll tell you that when it
I
comes
mean,
to
they're very addictive, it's
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I also
and
think like as a writer, there's something wonderful about seeing different takes on your characters, right? From
yeah,
different
it's so
styles.
cool. It's so cool, and that's part of why I'm doing these trading cards now with Destiny New York. Is it's a way to essentially get more color quality images that I can just put out all at once, um, and just to see those images, because I can't, the storage thing is big for me. I have the campaign that I went hardest on with variant covers, which was a mistake, was Spooky Girls, which was a YA book, and for a young adult book, it performed way better than most YA books that I've done, because of the title and people just like spooky stuff. Um, but I did. The book had 4 different stories, so I did a cover with all of them, and then a cover per character per story. So it was 5 covers when that book would have, I think, done the same at 2 covers. And now I have boxes on boxes. So,
Well,
so I'm
and I
trying to
think
do,
that's also understanding the market and knowing that I think the hardest thing to do on Kickstarter is kids books.
oh, dude,
Uh,
by far,
unless
yeah.
it's a Cthulhu kids book. Like Cthulhu, people seem to love Cthulhu on Kickstarter and they'll do a Cthulhu kids book. But aside from that, if you want to make money on Kickstarter, it's probably not through a kids book or even a YA book, unless you
Yeah.
have some big names attached.
Yeah. No, dude, you're right. It's unfortunate too, because I wish that Kickstarter and crowdfunding was this kind of like catch-all thing where we could do whatever we want. The truth is that we can't do whatever we want. It's definitely a market that we have to understand. And I will be talking to people, and a lot of comics creators, and this is not, I've had this conversation 3 times this month already. Well, in April. So it's telling how frequent it is. Um, a lot of comics creators feel that their next campaign is supposed to be bigger than their previous one, that each one is building. And it's off base. There are books that I'll talk to people and I'll be like, oh, the reason that this book didn't do as well or better than your previous one is because your previous one is a better Kickstarter book. It more ties into what people on this platform are buying and want. And this next one, there's just a bunch of variant covers of dudes drawn pretty similarly doing sort of action-based things vaguely, and that's not what people want on Kickstarter, really.
Right. Look, like you have a Pat Shan brand. There are X number of people who will back whatever you do because they like you. But that's not the same as your Destiny New York following.
That's right.
Like when I did White Ash, I knew, like I know that I have at this point, there's like a floor that's pretty high in terms of the number of books. When I was looking to do How I Slept My Way Through College and Other Tales from my freshman year, I knew the floor for that was going to be a lot lower, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't go into that expecting because there was no fantasy, and the bulk of my fans like fantasy. So this was more grounded. I went into it knowing that I was hoping to do say 35% of my last campaign. And that's roughly what I did in terms of backer numbers.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to be realistic about what sells, what doesn't sell, and what you're trying to do. It's the first issue of a new series. If people start to like it and it gets a following, maybe that could become its own thing. But don't think just because, like, I'm not dumb enough to think that if Charlie Stickney does anything, he's going to get the White Ash numbers. People love White Ash a lot more than they like me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, for now, that's true. Yeah, people do love the core series most, and yeah, that's just true. And that's yeah, there's definitely this idea of trying to one up your previous one that people have, when really, I want Destiny to grow. I don't want every book to grow past the main title, because that wouldn't be that great. But I do want to say, now that you've said it, How I Slept My Way Through College and Other Tales of My Freshman Year. Sick, dude. The title's sick. I love that kind of stuff. I was just talking about this on Twitter, about how a strength that manga has over most American titles is that manga, they hide their elevator pitch in the title. And I've been trying to do that. That title does exactly that. It takes the pitch and puts it in the title so you know what it's about. That's great.
Thanks. I went through a lot of different permutations before I landed on that, because you're trying to find the right tonal balance. You don't want to hide things too much. And I think you're right. At the end of the day, you want people to know what the book is about,
Yeah.
hopefully from the title.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And plus, I got the book. It arrived, I think, a few days ago, and I checked the mail yesterday, brought it in today. Dude, maybe the most high quality single issue I've ever felt in my hands. You have spot gloss on a single issue, which is so crazy. The cover is velvety. It's cardstock. I haven't read it yet because I wanted to, but I've been so slow. I'm just
it's fine. Like, your impression of the book right now,
yeah,
great. We'll just leave it with that. Like, it's great. It's one of the best things that you've felt. You just assume the inside is just as good.
Yeah, dude, I was very impressed, and I think that's, this is so dorky and so inside baseball, but I was not only impressed by, the way that you had it printed, but the little how would you even describe it? You have, like, I almost said it in the most vulgar possible way. Your bubble wrap, the way that you have it as I was gonna call it a pocket pussy. You have this bubble wrap that is fitted to the comic that folds over and seals. What, bro? What? What?
I think at the end of the day, it's packaging, and you're trying to get something that's, in good quality to people. And I started
Yeah.
looking into that because, like, can I find a good single issue size bubble wrap bag that I can then put inside the Gemini mailer or inside the other mailers? So, I want the book to add, and I've got the little sticker. Hopefully your sticker came through, which is like on the bubble wrap.
It sure did.
So like, it's, again, you're creating an experience, and you want people to feel like that the thing that that's the other thing that you can do on Kickstarter. Don't just, like, half-ass any part of it. If you put your heart and soul into the creation of the book, don't just stick it in a you've gotten these, I'm sure. Like, you get the single issue floppy comic that's just in a paper envelope and it comes mangled, right? Not as much as you used to, but like, like it used to be a thing. It's like, or someone to take a regular bag and board and just put it in an envelope. I want people to feel like they've gotten something special because you pay extra prices on Kickstarter. And as a creator, it takes a little bit more time. It is a little bit more expensive, but that experience goes through. Like you said, you felt like, that the condom, I mean, not the condom, the sheath around the comic was protecting it, right? From discharging or whatever it is. So
exactly, dude. Yeah, it was really cool to see you do that. And I in the past, I used to comment about that kind of stuff all the time because I would, you know, I took pride in my methods.
Probably
Dude,
broken glass too.
uh, I always took pride in how I sent stuff. I didn't do it in the best way back then for my own personal time. What I used to do was I would take a regular CVS yellow envelope, and that would be the base. I would cut out physically, I would slice out a plank of cardboard and I would bubble wrap the book and put it in there. And very few complaints about it coming through bad because the bubble wrap and the plank takes care of it. But the physicality of cutting out that plank of cardboard every time slowed me down so crazy. Whereas, now I do, I don't do what you do in terms of having the fitted bubble wrap. That to me is an amazing idea. Haven't looked into it yet. I didn't even know that it was a thing. But
I'll send you the link
yeah,
because you can fit trades nicely in those.
please do. What I do still is I have bubble wrap, and it's so conveniently perforated where I tear off 2 slices, wrap the book, put it in the Gemini mailer, tape it up, and that to me is it's been really good, and it's been a lot better than physically slicing off a chunk of cardboard to put into everything. Um, and yeah, Daniel, I'll post the link that Charlie sends me in the comments when this is through.
Well,
Um,
and I think Pat, going back to at the end of the day, you also were doing trades, right? And I
yeah,
think if you're doing single issue comics and you're doing them for collectors, which a lot of these people who, because like I had different tiers, like I like, you have never gotten the collector tier because that's not who you are,
right.
right? But I actually have a custom made box that that I put the multiple issues in when it's like a big stack of
It's
issues.
so sick. It's so sick.
Yeah, and like it's got like a white
Yeah.
ash printing on the inside. And so, but I think it's important. It's much more important for single issues than it is for trades, because trades are ultimately for readers, while where single issues, a lot of these people are collectors. And so,
Right.
with the collectors, you need to serve that market with everything that you do.
Yeah, it's you do such a cool balance though, where I mean, I don't want to be an asshole, but the truth is, and this has been influential on how I structure my rewards. Generally, I will get my books at my PO box, and I'll open my package there because if there's going to be 10 prints in there, they're getting thrown in the garbage. Like I don't want most of the extra rewards that people give, but when you send stuff, it's different. You put care into what comes in that package that is beyond just giving extra. You give a themed experience.
Well,
And
I
it's
do
cool.
try to do that because like I want it to be narrative too, right? It's building the narrative of the comic that you're reading. Make it that immersive experience. Make it that God, I just went to Universal Studios with my kids and to go to the Harry Potter experience, and because they wanted to do that, and God, it was 2 hours in line for this 5 minute ride. But the
Yeah,
last 10 minutes was great because then you're in, like they would used to do with Star Tours, where you're in Hogwarts and you're walking through the halls, and it's not it's not the ride, but it's something on the way to the ride. And it's the same kind of concept where it's not just another print that's stuck in there. It's something that's adding to the experience of reading the comic book, building that
yeah,
world, right?
yeah,
Like it's when people look back, like I thought the ride was fun, but it was more interesting being inside this building that someone had spent a lot of time doing art direction on,
yeah,
right? Like look, with how I slept my way through college, there's an acceptance letter from the dean that
yeah.
comes that's like in there. So like it's like making again feel like it's more of a real place. Um, and so like that's the kind of thing that I always want to continue to do where I can. With the Galarian campaign, there was a coin that was like was a subway token on one side, a New York City subway token, and the other side was a coin from Elfheim, which was sort of symbolizing the two different worlds that were in the book.
It's so cool. It's so cool, man.
So like
Yeah.
I think like it's stuff like that where you're feeling like, okay, it's not just this print that was commissioned to get people excited during the campaign, because we also get a lot of, like, I take my prints, and if they're really well done and it's an empowered woman, I give them to my daughter.
Yeah.
And then she posters them all over her wall. So she has all these
Oh, that's
superhero
cool.
prints of cool, female characters all over her wall, which, she loves getting those. But otherwise, they usually get recycled.
Yeah. 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 That's been part of, I look at what I like as a reader and as a collector, I guess, and what arrives, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And that is something that I would want to keep. That's what made me want to do more trading cards too, is that those I'll keep when someone sends cards. Like you send white ash cards, and those were
Yep.
so cool. And I'm trying to add this element of chase to my campaigns too, where I'm big on Pokemon cards, and the idea is that I'll buy $100 or plus booster box with the idea that I'm chasing certain cards in that set. So I'm trying to do this thing where I'll in my campaigns going forward, every campaign will have one trading card that everyone gets, and about 1/3 or 1/4 of backers will also get an alternate art version of that card. And the idea being that people will follow these campaigns, and that people, I'll see backers who have their name appears over and over and over, and I'll always, when I see that name, I'll have a warm feeling of like, oh, that person is an ongoing supporter. So now that person will have an increased chance of pulling to something cool, So that's what I'm trying to add to my campaigns. And now I'm gonna also add what you said, and that addition is actually a subtraction, and just pull back on those reward graphics. That's a very, very good tip.
Well, and I also think, like, I love that because I fulfill all my campaigns myself, even the big ones. Is seeing all those names of people who keep coming back to the campaigns. But one of the things in that chase vein that I saw on the latest Lady Death was, he was like, okay, there's 15 of these rare covers, and they're going to be randomly distributed amongst all the people who back the campaign,
It's a good
right?
idea.
Like which is like these metal covers, or I don't know, glass covers. I mean, when you raise $500,000, you can afford to give out a couple of $100 covers here and there.
Yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
but I do like that idea of it's that mystery box feel. Like
yeah,
when I open this package, am I going to be the person who got the golden ticket, who also got the, which what you're doing with your chase cards, and but even like upping that, like, because these were covers that you could only buy for like $150, and there were a couple
oh, it's
just thrown in
such a
there.
good idea, dude. It's such a good idea. Yeah, that's yeah, Brian Polito is someone that people should definitely watch, as far as just seeing how, you know, seeing how he moves and seeing how he activates that fan base. Because the truth is, he does come in with this pre-established fan base, but to activate it that way and bring them onto this platform in that manner is unique to him for sure.
And he's growing too. I mean, like, you look at his campaigns, the number of backers have grown.
Yeah,
Right? So he's building a fan base beyond his initial core fan base that came to Kickstarter. And people aren't, because that's the other thing, is you make these campaigns events. If it feels like he's making these feel like an event, and you have
yeah,
to
yeah.
watch his video posts, and so it's a show. So it's not just you're getting
You're
this
right.
comic, you're getting a show, and you get to be part of the Lady Death experience. Um,
Yeah,
so I think, like, once you start getting into the realm, I mean, Pat, I mean, like, that's for you and me to start thinking about now, is how do we make, beyond what people are already doing, how can you make it more of an experience? What things can we bring to the backers? Is there a cosplayer who's going to come do an update and tell a little something about, White Ash? They're going to have some backer only updates, which are a little bit of a narrative story.
that's cool. Yeah,
Like, things like, I don't know. I'm just like riffing right now, just trying to think of some things. But I think making it feel like it's a private experience that you get to participate in because you're part of this Kickstarter campaign and part of this world.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and that's what he does, and he almost makes it where being a backer of his books is an identity. He
Hmm.
has a name for what the group calls themselves, and that's so sick. Um, I do want to get back to this though. You said something interesting before where you said that when you know when you make variant covers that are sexy covers, that you have to know what your line is. Can you elaborate on what your line is there? Because I find it interesting how a certain sect of the comics community sees covers like this, and I think that they're off base. So I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts there.
Well, I think, like, first of all, for me personally, I'm not going to do any of the show me your bits covers, right? Like, I want the cover to be a good cover on its own.
Yeah.
I want it to be something that's narrative to the book. So even like the sexy covers that I've had have been moments from the interiors. Like
Mm,
I really like I like the old style comic book cover where the cover was a snapshot selling something that happened
right.
versus, so many of the covers now are just pretty paintings that are pinups, right? And so, like, if I'm doing something, I want it to narratively tie in to whatever the book is. Um, so if there's no sexy content in the book, I'm not going to have a character acting sexy on a cover in a way that's
Mm,
not, intrinsic to what's happening in the story. So if there's a sexy moment to draw from, then I'm more comfortable going there.
gotcha.
In terms of uh, you know nudity or things like that, I think the other thing that helps for me is if I'm you know when I'm choosing a cover artist. It depends on who the cover artist is, what kind of work they do. If you're if I'm working I hope that's for you. But like like also like if I'm working with a woman who's the artist, and I give her the freedom to really design what she wants to do,
Yeah.
it inherently takes some of that weight off of me in terms of choosing how sexy it is, how sexy it isn't, what's the camera angle, how is it depicted. So like I think we bring some inherent gaze to whatever we're doing. So if I say I want it to be like the camera looking down Broadway, like that's me dictating. If I say, do you want to do something sensual, do you want to do something action based, and they come back and say I want to do something sensual, and I say, well, here's some pages from the interior of the comic, what do you think?
Right.
So that's kind of how I've approached a lot of those things. Yes. But
Inherent gaze is what I bring to my stuff for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, but I think like, so I try to be respectful. I think that's, I think about these
Yeah.
things. I'm not just looking for something that's sexy for the sake of it being sexy. Um, I spend a lot of time thinking, like, so when I say what's my line is not like choosing a character, saying making her sexy and putting her on the cover, or him on the cover, but that's not going to sell. So is it many because most of the audience of my books, if it's something sexy, would probably prefer a sexy female elf. Um,
I think so.
but but like, so I think it's being considered in terms of what you're choosing, in terms of the images you're putting forward, and knowing what the impact they have is. So I think a lot about that. So my line so far is I haven't really done any nude covers, and I don't know if that's something that I'm looking to do, because I think that's putting the focus on maybe the wrong thing. Again, I wanted to tell a story.
Right.
Um, but that's not to say, like, just some of the artists that you choose, their work is inherently sexy, and they're going to bring that to it no matter what you say. You say, like, they're eating a sandwich, and you're going to get the sexy, Carl's Jr., or I guess Arby's, depending on what part of the country you're in, where they're eating the sandwich and it's super sexy.
Yeah. No, I that makes 100% sense to me, dude. I'm asked this question a lot too because people it's so interesting. Like we actually right now have Raven Gregory in the comments, and he and I have had a lot of back and forth about this kind of thing. Uh, Ravens covers trend more toward the Zenoscope exclusive style of
Mhm.
covers, and I think that there's definitely back in the day I would have conversations with Zenoscope where I was like, we don't have to keep doing this, and that. And the truth is, I was wrong. I mean, what they did was the right thing to do for that company. And they have more readers on the actual content of their title because of how they've monetized their collector base. And they're doing things the right way. And I was wrong.
Well, but
Um,
I would also say, like with the Zenoscope covers, you have sexy, empowered women in action poses more often than not,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think that some people don't see that, which is frustrating for me personally. But I think you're right.
Because like there's no doubt that those covers are sexy and there's a lot of cleavage and like you can look at it like that. But
Yeah,
if you compare that to say the covers, the sexy covers on Kickstarter, which like there's no narrative, there's no costume. It's just here I am on a bed posing, right? So I do think like there's something to be said for a character who's actively, like comics have always had some sex in them, right? I mean,
yeah,
like that's just part of the genre. It's just there's nothing wrong with leaning into it. It's just how you lean into it.
yeah. And I think that there's an element of prudeness in the comics industry where because of the temperature of certain things, people and publishers are scared to be sexual at all. And I'll have conversations with people who would consider thirsty, which thirsty is what I would say. I would pitch it as it's artsy erotica. Some people would look at thirsty and say that's a titty book right there. Whereas I don't see it that way. And some people would even look at like some of the covers that we've done for Destiny New York, and I'm sure White Ash, and think, oh, that leans cheesecake. Whereas I don't think so. And conversations that I've had with Raven, who is in the comments here, um, would definitely say that I don't do cheesecake at all versus what he does. And yeah,
Well,
it's very interesting to see the different takes and the different level of the damn prudeness right now.
well, it's also like what I'm willing to do on Kickstarter is what different than what I would do at Scout. And part of the reason is Scout is a collective of different creators who have creator-owned books, and
Yeah,
so any stigma or backlash would go on to onto the brand, which encompasses a lot of the creators. Versus I can have my own line and my own comfort level in my own work on Kickstarter, and
yeah,
I'm my own entity. Versus like if you're putting Destin in New York out through Black Mask, there's probably a certain, well, no, actually Black Mask has plenty of other covers too. So but I think that's my thought is like you just have to know which market, what's your own personal line, and be good with it. And
yeah.
if you don't feel like you're being exploitive, um then you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely my advice is do you, and also, whether you're doing a cheesecake cover or a non-cheesecake cover, whatever that means to you. I think that just, lean interesting. There are so many covers where, if it's a sexy cover, it'll just be a pose. And I always do think on Kickstarter, that's your character. You're paying for this cover. You're an indie creator. Be more interesting. Make it themed better. But the same is true for covers that are poses of like these dudes doing action based shit. It's like
Yeah, it's all got to
it's
be interesting.
just make it more unique. Wear indie for a reason. Try. There are things that I've done, covers that I've paid a lot for, where I'll put it out there and it didn't come out how I wanted it. That happens to me all the time. And I'll look, and my thought is at least we tried something different, something cool. And I think that there are a lot of creators who will find an artist that they love and just really trust that artist to just give them something unique. And that's cool when the artist is a superstar. But I do think that we need some level of direction here and there. I think that there has to be a a balance between letting an artist go wild and also staying true to your vision, which is what I think you do that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and again, some of it's just, it's casting, right? Or it's choosing the right artist for the right book. Um, I, Thanks to you, you introduced me many years ago or several years ago to Romana
Oh
Morinelli,
yeah,
and
great.
and she brings a level of sexiness to everything she does.
Yeah,
Like that's just intrinsic to her work. So you don't even have to say if you want something to be set because she's just going to make it that way. And so like working with her is really easy in that regard. So but you give someone direction but then get out of the way so they can do what they do well. She'll also make it interesting. Like she did this amazing like 50s Marlena Dietrich kind of style cover for this last White Ash campaign that
yeah,
was super sexy but also just like a beautiful image.
right.
um so finding people who do that, make it interesting, sexy, make it interesting action, make it interesting, tragic. It's not like there isn't 60 years or 70 years of great covers out there
Yeah,
that you
it's true.
can't set, you can be like, hey, you do your thing, but here are 20 covers that I love that are in the right direction. Do your take on something like this. Um,
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, because it doesn't even have to be homage. It could be something as simple as something like this, the vibe of this, you know. Because I think that we do lean a bit our industry is a bit too self-referential for my likes. You know, we do all these like tribute covers to these old superhero covers, but I think that what you're saying is more along the lines of take inspiration from just we have
right.
decades to pull from.
We did a vintage. I have like a romance cover for White Ash #2, like on Kickstarter that I did, and I sent Connor and Finn. I said, like, look at all these old romance comics. Let's do something in that vein as our alternate V cover.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and we had a concept that was going with it, and then Connor went up and did something, and then Finn took it the next level, and he actually made the book look vintage, so it looks like an old,
that's cool.
but it looks so good. But it wasn't, hey, do an homage of this cover. It was do something in this style.
Right.
Or look at this concept in terms of, we want to bring this like I like so like the A cover for the most recent White Ash campaign was, it's a play a little bit on Basic Instinct because
Okay.
it's from an interrogation scene. So use that for inspiration, Connor, and he did. Like there's a little word balloon with it, and there's like a joke in the cover. But here's your inspiration. Now go do your take.
Yeah. I
Uh,
wish that I was savvy enough to put the cover in here. This is my first time using StreamYard,
I,
so I don't know how to make it pop up. But
I can probably find that one here. Hold on a second. Give me
yeah, you
two
know,
seconds. And
pop into the comments there. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, we have Raven in the comments saying every time you say pack is a little bit shorter. Dude, I mean, I'm taller than you, Raven, you know? Raven thinks that he's taller than he is. I'd say that Raven is five what I mean 5'5" you are, Raven, you know, and I'm 6'2". So it's it's just insecurity showing.
that seems about the same size as all of us. Yeah, I'm also about 6'2". Let's see. We'll get this up so you can see. Share screen. No. Okay, the screen share doesn't work. Let's see if we can.
Okay. This will be a thing that I'll figure out in time too. This is
Sure.
before this I've used what's the app that went crazy when COVID started? Um Zoom.
Zoom, yes.
Yeah. Pat, my dick is taller than you, and my dick is not that tall. That joke was saved by the self-deprecation. Very good.
One. Here we go. So
You got it up?
now, I think so. Hold on a second.
Okay. Hey,
Do
let's see
this.
if we can do it. If we
So
can bring it up.
it's uploading. So like this was like this. It's processing. It's going to
Okay.
show in 1 second. This was like the, hey, there we go. Use Basic Instinct as your inspiration from the interrogation scene.
Hold on, let me take Raven's comment out of here. That's funny. All right, there we go. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, of course, that scene. Yeah, iconic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
and as she's saying, I think she says, "My eyes are up here, officer." And above her, she has like all the monsters with all their eyes.
It's sick. Yeah.
Um, and it's Connor, and he just draws some really pretty stuff. But like that's a sexy cover, but it's also a piece of the story.
Right.
So I think that's my point, is finding things that are both interesting and also will sell the book.
That's very cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So you just recently had your biggest campaign yet for White Ash. And at the same time you are shipping and have shipped How I Slept My Way Through College. So what is next for people who want to follow you?
so we're going to be doing a Galarian campaign, which is the spin-off from White Ash, the second issue of that, probably late June, early July. As soon as we start shipping out White Ash, we're going to go
Right.
live with the Galarian campaign, which is, as we're going back to what we started with before, that's the spin-off building out the universe.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Raven Connor's amazing. Like, just really a killer artist.
Do you have more spin-offs in mind? Because that's one thing that I've thought about is I don't want to overload my audience, but I'm always thinking of ways to expand on Destiny New York. So do you have more White Ash coming in different titles?
Yeah, so I have another mini series that's scheduled for one of the other characters to go do their own thing for 5 issues.
Nice.
But it also helps flesh out the series. And because it has such a large timeline, because there are stories that take place in the 1950s, in the 1970s,
Right.
in the 1200s, like I have one that might take place during the Crusades that I'm
Damn,
looking
really?
to, yeah,
That's sick.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's like, and that, who knows, might even be a crossover with another character from another book. Um,
Really?
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
uh, yeah. Thinking about
Yeah.
it. But yeah, like I think when you have a tapestry that goes that far back and you're looking to tell a story, you know, so yes, definitely there's a couple more that are in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And I consistently do these little Galarian short stories. They're
Yes.
anywhere between 8 to 12 pages long, and those all are building the White Ash backstory as well. So we're going to keep doing some more of those.
Awesome. Before we close, is there anything else that you want to share or tease or
Um,
anything?
no, I mean, like, there's going to be a lot coming this year. More of the game will be coming out probably in late August, early September. Next
Oh,
issue
nice.
of How I Slept My Way Through College is probably going to come out early fall. So all of that is in the works. I also do this series called The Adept that we'll be doing. Third issue of that will be coming out soon too.
Oh yeah, that's with our shared collaborator Yishan Lee.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great
She's
artist.
great
Yeah,
artist, and Tasha who I co-write that one with. She's an amazing woman to work with.
sick. Yeah, Yishan. I remember. I first saw her stuff on Buffy the high school years, and
Mm-hmm.
then I saw
Yeah,
her move on to do I think Sugar with Top Cow maybe.
yeah, and then
Um,
Swing took over
Swing
Swing.
with Matt. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. She's really really cool. She has such a cool sense of character where she has such a specific style, but she can really balance both her style and capturing characters. It's so unique. Who is similar to me in that way is Eliza Ramboli. She's just
mm-hmm.
really a strong style while perfectly carrying out what it is to make a character feel consistent. It's kind of hard to pitch that to artists because I've had artists who, when you have such a backstory, backlog of content, you have to make characters feel consistent over years, over different artist runs for me personally, and it's such a unique skill to have. And I've had artists test, and they'll turn in a great page, but the characters will look nothing like the previous depiction, and that'll be my note. And the artist will go, "Oh, but that's just my style." And it's like, "Oh, well, it's cool, but it can't fit here because you have to carry on that,
Right.
that vibe." So Yishan does a great job of that for sure.
Yeah, but also doing it in her own style and still
Exactly,
making it feel intrinsic. Yeah, she's amazing to work with and super fast.
for sure.
Uh,
Yeah, no, she is fast for sure. Um, yeah, Charlie, where can people find you, dude?
well, the easiest place is on Twitter at Charles Stickney on Twitter. But there's also White Ash Comic. White Ash is there. It's also at scoutcomics.com. But I'd say, yeah, Scout Comics is probably not. I mean, sorry, Twitter is the fastest place to find me.
So you're staying on Twitter, even though Elon, you capitalist dog.
We'll see. We'll see. Like I'm not a reactionary person. I like to always see how things play out before I decide to boycott or upend my entire network based on the fact that someone may or may not purchase things.
Wait, so you didn't immediately disavow Kickstarter when they started to roll out blockchain?
I did not, seeing as they still have not rolled out blockchain or
Right.
figured out I think it's fun to get behind these movements, but you also have to remember these things take time, right? Even if like a company wants to move to blockchain or a company wants to get bought out, there's going to be a transition period where you can wait and see, especially if you've built your business. I was in this this lecture the other day, which was talking about a concept calling digital sharecropping, which I don't know if you've heard of before, but it was a great concept. But it's basically like how we build our social networks on platforms we don't own, right? And you could build your business model on Kickstarter, another platform you don't own. So if something happens to that platform, you could be shit out of luck if you don't feel like you still want to put your content on it.
Yeah.
So for me, where I have a decent following on Twitter and I've done a lot of things on Kickstarter, I'm not going to upend everything I do because a change may or may not happen.
Right.
I always let's see how it plays out. And if horrible people come in and start being part of this thing that I'm being part of, then it's time to leave. But
Yeah.
if they don't, like, you don't know. So I think especially new creators, you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. You want to see how these things play out, because you and I have talked. I mean, Kickstarter is one of the best places, the most supportive places for independent creators
I
that's
think so.
maybe ever existed, right? For comics.
Yeah, I think
They,
bar none. Yeah. Yeah.
so like, give them the benefit of the doubt, and if they turn out to be evil at some point in a way that you can't reconcile with, then leave. But don't base your decisions now on something that may happen 3 years down the road.
Yeah, and I think that what you said too is something that people don't really realize, is that like they're having fun hopping on these hate campaigns. It's fun to be reactionary. It's fun to dwell on that negative for a lot of people. And when I see people talking about leaving these platforms, I really do think, how can you leave when you're having so much fun bitching right now? Like,
Right.
you built your audience by bitching.
Yeah.
So now that you have a bigger chance to bitch, you think you're gonna leave? Bro, come on. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're gonna dig into this shit, dude.
Well, like going to that, I feel like now that this podcast is going to be the biggest thing on social media, I think people are going to be lining up to be on this. And if I had to be behind someone, I guess being number 2 to Raven, who's in the chat, isn't the worst.
Yeah, Raven was number 1 on the show. He did do episode
right.
1. He did.
So,
Yeah, and this episode so far, we only said pussy once. So Raven,
and by we mean you.
Right. So now twice. So Raven does still have the monopoly on that for sure. But yeah, dude, thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah, it was a blast, and I look forward to seeing you in person again one day when
Absolutely.
the winds blow the right way.
New York, right?
Maybe.
Come on. Come on.
Always a discussion with the family. So
all right,
if I can make it, I'll be out.
Makes sense to me. All right, dude.
Yeah. All right. See you later.